I hope you all enjoyed a very happy Thanksgiving. And I want to welcome you back to Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, where one of the things I am very thankful for is the lifelong bonds I have with my TV family. Recently, you saw me having a chance to sit down and talk with Michael Learned. Well, today I am very happy to share with you a recent sit down I had with Jon Walmsley. So, if you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. Welcome, Jon Walmsley. Welcome, Jon. It is so wonderful to have you join me. I so appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and with all of our fans.
Of course. My pleasure. It's great to see you.
Yes.
You look wonderful.
Thank you. You too. And of course,
Thanks.
we were lucky enough to spend some time together recently. And I think you said it had been since about 2019 that we'd had a chance to see each other.
Yes. Was that Pennsylvania?
Could have been.
Altoona?
Yeah, something like that. 18, 19. Yeah. So
before the Black Plague hit.
Yes, definitely. I think there were some other things in the works for all of us, in our lives that got sort of postponed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of things that I get asked about you and your life and the Waltons and all of that. So I'm gonna sort of combine a couple of them here off the top, because I know one of the things that we definitely want people to know about is your new CD. Now, right. I think with the setup music, clearly everybody associates the character of Jason as the musician in the family. So maybe you can let people know a little bit how that came about and the amount of music and the exploration of that and how that became really the trajectory of Jason's character.
Well, when the show started, the writers, Earl in particular, but his staff of writers, were always looking for ways to develop our characters. And as you remember, we had to be very careful what we said or did, because if we weren't, it would be in the next script. So that I remember being kind of a running gag as we were working. But in the Homecoming script, I mentioned Jason playing the harmonica.
Yeah. Why don't you play something Christmassy, Jason? It's not Christmas yet.
And playing, I think, Life is Just a Bowl of Cherries While We Crack Walnuts.
You just give it to me, honey. I'll take it down to the post office and mail it special delivery.
Now, by the way, I should have gotten stunt pay for this, because it's very hard to play the harmonica and eat walnuts at the same time. Anyway, I did that. I think that's the reason I got the part, actually, because I took my harmonica to the audition and played that, and Earl saying that I looked more like him than his own son did, I think were maybe the two things that helped get me the part. Now, after the Homecoming, no one had any idea that it was going to be a series. But the music aspect of Jason is something that could have been dropped, if they had gotten someone who didn't play. But as I did, they decided that was going to be Jason's identity.
Cool. I didn't get to be part of any of sort of the behind the scenes of the creation of the music. There were, of course, times where everybody would sing together in church or around the Christmas tree. And I remember sometimes we dealt with playback and sometimes we just did it live. But of course, that was such a huge part of what you were doing. Can you walk us through how that process would go? What was live? What was playback? How did the playback get created? All of that sort of piece of the music?
Well, there was not really anything consistent about how the music was done, at least as far as music played on the set. Obviously, every episode was scored afterwards by Alexander Courage, and who did a beautiful job. But that was all done later. So he would sit in his studio or office, watch the film, and write the music to it. But on the set, we would have to sing something often like, Away in a Manger or something like that. And funny part about that is, I mean, if you watch The Homecoming, I think didn't we sing that in front of the store, Away in a Manger?
Yeah.
Right, okay. If you watch that scene, the key changes throughout the scene. As they cut from the master shot to close-ups, the key of the song keeps changing because no one gave us a note before we started. So from shot to shot, it goes, away in a manger, no crib for, it's all over the place. So I kind of made it my job if we were on the set and we were in church or down by the river or wherever we were, and it was a crowd sing, I would pull out a harmonica and give everyone a note. I'd say, wait, you get stop. We have to give a note to everybody first. Otherwise, it's going to be all goofed up when we do coverage. So I think I saved the music editor a few times in that way. Other things, gosh, there were times when, lots of times, when I would play, particularly during a scene, and if it was just me, that I was playing live, and then it was recorded. If there was no need to do coverage, then it didn't matter about having a playback on the set. Other times we would play something, and then they would record it as we were shooting the master. Then they would play back the sound of that for the coverage, and then we would mime to it. Right, so it was the same original recording, and that way they could cut in and out easily. Sometimes, like when Linda Purl or Erin Moran were on the show and we sang together, we would go into the studio beforehand and do a proper recording of it, and then we would lip sync on the set. And of course, we actually sang along, and I played along, because as far as lip syncing goes, it always, for some reason, it always looks better if you actually sing than if you just, mime the words and no sound comes out of your mouth. I don't know what it is about that, but we found that to be true. So that's basically what we did. Did I cover all the scenarios?
Yeah. I mean, there were, of course, all the times that you were either in the dewdrop yourself, but then particularly when we did sort of dances, we did a lot of barn dances on the show, and quite often you would be part of a band.
Right.
So were those actual playing musicians in those circumstances?
Yes, all the musicians that I played with in a band setting on the show were real musicians, terrific musicians. Some of them were at the time were playing in Glenn Campbell's band and so on, and they were doing, record sessions and stuff like that. So they all had other careers, and they were all great full-time musicians. So again, sometimes we would play live on the set, it would be recorded, and sometimes we would have a session in the studio just to record the soundtrack first.
Right. So was that the case with the musicians who were part of Bobby Bigelow's Haystack Gang?
Yes, exactly. We did it both ways. I think it was just it probably depended on how much coverage needed to be done for a scene, or I don't know. Maybe it came down to the music editor and the sound department, and obviously there are various ways to do it, and we did it several different ways, and it seemed to work.
It did. I remember when I spoke with John Dayton, him talking about how expensive it was to use playback, so they tried to do it as little as they had to, just because of the expense of it.
Right.
Whether that was the combination of having to do a recording session, and then the equipment on the set and that. So I'm not sure all of what was involved with the expense relative to that, but we know that we were always working on a shoestring. So if they could save money, they would.
Right. It's funny how it always came down to money.
As it always does.
So many of the decisions were based on that. So Yeah, we're lucky, in a way, that the show turned out as well as it did.
Absolutely. And I do remember that particularly with those sort of barn dance scenes, that because there was often dialogue as well, you and the band would be in the position of perhaps when dialogue was happening where we could see the band in the background, they'd have to cut the playback, or you guys would just have to be miming because there was dialogue going on. And everybody, if you were dancing, had to just sort of maintain this imaginary rhythm in your mind. So I don't know if there were times where you caught people having lost the rhythm of the dance.
Oh, sure, that happened all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember that as well. It's really funny that there's music playing, everybody's dancing, you're having a good time, and all of a sudden there's no music. Everybody keeps, and all you heard was shuffling feet on the floor, right? So it was a little funny and awkward, but that's how they do it.
Yeah, and fortunately, we weren't supposed to be experts at any of this. The same thing with the singing, that
right.
The change of keys, that happens with people all the time. Somebody starts Happy Birthday and you've got 4 keys going on.
Right.
It makes it more realistic in many ways. Now, of course, you also wrote a lot of the music that Jason sang.
I did.
Did they come to you in advance and say there's going to be a song in this episode? Would you write something, or how'd that fly?
Well, I think when we started doing the show, I think I gave Earl a little tape of some songs that I had, and they hadn't used any. And then one day we got the next script, and it said Jason performs the Ironing Board Blues.
And you know that Grandma Walton's playing the Ironing Board Blues. Oh, the Ironing Board Blues is over.
And I thought, wait a minute, what's this? So I said, does this mean that you want me to write a song with this title? And they said, yes. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I guess I better get busy.
Wow. Thank goodness you were fast.
Yeah, so that's what happened. And luckily that song came very quickly. I mean, probably spent 15 or 20 minutes on it and it was done.
Wow.
So
yeah.
And that's one that people tend to remember. There were others. In fact, that's one nice aspect of the show is that all that music was run through a publishing company and BMI, and when I started getting royalties for writing songs, the BMI form always lists all the music, all the titles that you're being paid for. Mm-hmm. And I got this list, and I thought, what is all this? And it would say Jason's harmonica, John's guitar, Jason's piano noodling. And I thought, what is this? And it was all little bits and pieces that I had ad-libbed on the set, and then the statement would come, and I'd have made 37 cents for Jason's piano noodling.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was great.
That's awesome. One piece that I believe you did not write, but that people ask about all the time because it is not credited, is the Appalachian Portrait.
Right, that's true. That was Alexander Courage.
Okay.
And that was something that they actually did a pre-record of, because I was supposed to be playing it on the piano. So they had pre-recorded that, and so then I mimed that. Because
did you do the pre-record?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't. I mean, that was quite a complex sort of classical sounding piece. The funny thing about Jason becoming a musician on the show, although I did play, and obviously I played harmonica in the Homecoming, and then guitar and piano. because of the way that the story developed, I was playing Carry Me Back to Old Virginia on the piano one season. The next season, Jason's in the conservatory playing all this extremely complex classical music that he'd written. It's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I've become, a concert pianist, which I am not. I play my songs and, blues tunes and, rootsy rock and roll and country and, that kind of thing. Sort of, singer-songwriter type piano playing, but I'm not a classical pianist. So those things, like was it Appalachian Spring? Is that what it was?
I think Appalachian Portrait was what it was called.
Portrait.
Yeah.
Portrait. So that was an instance where they had, and I don't know who the session player was, but they had some, great Hollywood session piano player playing this classical, or maybe it was even Sandy Courage. I don't know. It might have been playing the piece, and then I mimed that in those situations. But most of the time, when I'm playing in the living room or the church or a dewdrop bin or singing with grandma or whatever, we're standing around the campfire. It's all me.
That's what I remembered. Did you get to work with Sandy Courage very often?
Yeah, quite a bit. And he was very supportive of my music, and he actually, tried to teach me some things. He'd been around forever. He had worked on old musicals at MGM, and so he had written the theme song for Star Trek, which I loved. Yeah, and so he had a very long and varied career, and he was a lovely man, a real sweetheart. Very proud of his Scottish heritage, and that's why they called him Sandy. And the funny thing was, because I mentioned just now that there were those few times when I had to mime piano, and he would say, well, we're going to get so-and-so in the studio to record the classical piece. And he said, and then you can just sit there and wash your socks. He said, that's what we used to call it at MGM in the old films, when the actor would come in and there'd be a piano recording and the actor would go like this. It looked like they didn't know how to play, and it looked like they were washing socks. So hopefully it looked better than sock washing. I did put some time into those pieces though, because I wanted to be sure that I was in the right place on the keyboard and playing the right rhythm and all that, so it would look good. So
would they send you a copy of it prior to the when you had to record the scene?
Yes. So I studied the recording prior to shooting the scene. Mm-hmm. So at least I would have the rhythm and, kind of work out fingerings and stuff, even though I didn't have to really play it, or certainly not play it well. I mean, I could. It's the kind of thing where, if I'd had, 6 months, I probably could have learned it and actually played it, but we didn't have that much time.
Right. I want to thank Jon for being here and chatting with me here on part 1. I will be back with part 2 with Jon very soon, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching.